Hi everyone, I'm Sarah.
I'm Lucinda.
And welcome back to another color class. In today's color class, we are going to be looking at how to read an ingredient label. And we're going to be doing something a little bit different today because, as you know, our background, we have been in the cosmetic industry for a combined 40 years.
Combined, yes.
Right. So we've been doing cosmetics and skincare together. Part of it has been product development. And we get hit a lot with what are some options for color, meaning makeup and products like that. But the first thing we want to get back to are the basics of an ingredient deck and how to read it.
Part of this came about because people were asking us, you have recommended mass market products, and do I buy mass market? Do I buy prestige? How do I know if one thing is good or one thing isn't good? And so, as you and I both know, part of that, mass market is great. And getting your products through the mass market is fantastic. You just have to do a little bit of research. So if you see something in the prestige market that's a $60 cream and you're thinking, I wonder if this is available in the mass market for $12 or $20 or whatever, we're going to tell you today, a way to do the research and understand whether it is or whether it isn't.
Right. I've been seeing a lot of people on TikTok doing ingredient list readings and figuring out substitutes that are really great for ingredient products. So like the other day I saw the grip primers, like any type of grip primer, and aloe vera. They have very similar ingredient decks because you want that sticky film that also primes, that also hydrates. Aloe vera gel is the perfect substitute for it if you want something inexpensive.
Plus, it's fantastic for your skin.
Exactly.
And what a great tip.
And the ingredient label is very easy to read because it is just aloe vera gel. But let's get into some tips on reading ingredient decks.
When people are talking about ingredient decks, they call it the INCI deck.
Well, we just being in the field and in the skincare industry, we always refer to it as the INCI, INCI, and all caps. You'll see that. We hardly ever call it ingredient deck.
Yes, we never do.
Right. INCI stands for the International Nomenclature of Cosmetics. Of cosmetic ingredients. So INCI. That's what it stands for. And it's kind of like a standardized version of cosmetic ingredients that are published that you'll see in the ingredient deck.
And it's required because if you're going to sell a product internationally or even domestically and you're putting together an ingredient deck, it has to follow a certain style.
Right.
And it starts out with, the name ingredients, unless you have an OTC drug in your product, like a sunscreen, at which case you have to split that out and you'll first see active ingredients and then you'll see ingredients.
Well, the US and the EU are very similar, but I will say I do like the EU regulations a little bit better. When we were developing every single product that I would look at, I always looked at the ingredients within the EU standards. So even if there was an ingredient deck, I would look at EU standards because I feel like the EU standards, they're a little bit more on top of it. They're more updated. Like the US sunscreen ingredients have not been addressed in a very long time. They're very outdated compared to the EU standards. They have really good recommendations on highest points. Also, a lot of the products that we did work with were even banned in the EU. We've had ingredients that were banned because they contained certain ingredients that
and by
not
EU,
be sold.
just for everyone, European Union.
Right.
And so basically the European Union is kind of the gold standard for it's stricter.
I would say it's a little more updated. It just they're a little bit more on top of it.
And just if you're talking about domestically, what's crazy is Sarah was developing sunscreen products and it ran into the fact that certain products, certain ingredients are banned in California and Hawaii.
Not California. They're
Or was
banned
it
in
Hawaii
Hawaii,
and
Key West. Yeah, there are certain ingredients that are like if you see the word reef safe on ingredient lists for sunscreen, you know that you can actually wear them in places like Hawaii. There's actually certain cities or towns or counties somewhere
any place that has coral reefs.
Right. They try to ban these because they're bleaching the coral reef. So really, these ingredients depend on all over.
And California does have a higher standard than any place else in the United States. And Japan has a higher standard internationally than a lot of other countries. So, you know, if I don't know if this is relative to you in any way, but basically, if a product is being sold internationally and you know it's being sold in Japan, then the safety protocols are much higher than even the EU and the United States.
That's why I do love like The Ordinary. A lot of their products are done with the EU standards. Well, they are done with the EU standards. But even when they first came out with their sunscreen, it said it was tested based off the EU standards because the SPF wasn't tested in the US. And SPF testing in the US is very expensive versus in the EU. But the standards are usually better in the EU. So it's interesting, but that's why I use the Ordinary skincare line so much, just because simple ingredient decks, easy to read. They put a lot of their pH levels, their ingredient lists, their percentages online, so you can actually read them, see what the product is going to do for your skin.
And not to go too far afield, and getting back to
yes,
what to look for in an ingredient deck, what would you say is kind of like the first rule in the ingredient list and what you're looking for in terms of the INCI nomenclature?
Well, I think you're trying to tell me to talk about how an ingredient list is
set up.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So of course your higher percentaged weight items are going to be at the top, and then it's going to go down to your smaller items. So you'll usually see like water or aqua as the first ingredient, or you're going to see like aloe vera. Or what are some other top ingredients that are
basically certain of your carriers, your
main ingredient.
But when you're getting into things that people are making a claim for, now let's just say these are usually predominantly in Latin, like water is aqua. Now, certain oils, for some reason, don't seem to be in Latin. You know, it'll be like palm kernel oil, and that will be okay. But you'll see things like aloe is aloe vera barbanensis, I think. Something like that. So if, you know, you'll see Latin names. Now, we have a trick for you that we're going to tell you later that is the bomb in terms of being able to decode all this mess. But what you'll see at the top is usually most of the stuff. If you're baking a cake, it's the flour, it's the oil, it's the sugar. Now, down at the bottom, you might find the sprinkles or the chocolate chips or whatever you're putting in your cake. But not too far toward the bottom. Here's a kind of a good rule of thumb. And in color products, you'll always find the dyes at the very bottom.
Those are going to look like CI, CO with a bunch of numbers after it.
Or, like Blue Lake, Red Lake. So if your effective product, if you're looking for something like an acid, like a hyaluronic acid or an alpha hydroxy acid, you want to see those up toward the top to middle of the deck. If you see this ingredient that the company is advertising at the bottom of the deck, it's what we call a marketing claim. And basically what they do is they throw it in at less than 1% because it's cheap. Just sprinkle it over the top of the vat. And then they can say, well, this has, this expensive ingredient in it. But if you find it at the bottom of the deck, that means that it's not going to do you any good. What you want is to see it further up because, as Sarah said, it's by weight. So you'll have a lot of the basic carriers and the lipids and the things up toward the top. And then, if you've got some of these things like peptides and acids and things that you're looking for, vitamins, you want to see those further up.
Because after, well, anything less than 1% can actually be kind of just combined anywhere at the bottom of the deck.
Yeah, scattered like cake sprinkles.
Yeah, like usually they want the good stuff higher up. So it goes from the most all the way down to when it hits below 1%. So you get all your big stuff up at the top, and then once it hits below 1%, then it's just sprinkled in to whatever's in there.
For a marketing claim,
Right.
more than likely.
Right. And then it kind of can just be tossed in there, but usually what they'll do is push it higher up so people think they're getting more, but it really could just be the last ingredient on the list.
But it's got to be it has to be a 1%er. So basically, most of the stuff that makes up your product, the cake, it will be higher up in the deck.
Right.
But if, let's say, they throw in 20 superstar ingredients at the under 1%, so that the efficacy level is not really there, because certain things need to be added at a higher percentage generally in your cake. If they're a bunch scattered at the bottom, it can look like there's a lot of stuff, but by law they can put it in any order down there at the bottom of the deck except for color. The color has to be at the very bottom, but they can put it kind of anywhere in that 1% category. But think about your cake. What is 1% by volume of your cake of a certain ingredient going to do to your cake? Not a lot.
Yeah, what are sprinkles going to do to your cake other than
make them pretty?
Make it pretty. That's what those ingredients are doing. They're just making it pretty.
Or as we say, it's a marketing claim.
Right.
So, and Sarah will get into more marketing claims as we go down some of these. We've kind of done all that.
Oh, this isn't. Wait, this is descending order. What is this? Basic one of the ingredient list uses INCI nomenclature. Oh, we kind of.
Yeah, we kind of.
I'm going to bring that back when we.
Good. Okay.
Okay, there's some little sections. OTC cosmetics. Okay, we'll get into over the counter. Over the counter is regulated by the FDA, but it's not like the FDA just walks in there and tests your stuff.
Right, and you'll almost always see it on your foundations if they have an SPF.
I was just talking about like how you need to trust your skincare brand, because it's not like the FDA is literally, this is all going based off what the lab says.
Yeah, it's not like your medication that you're taking.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Are you ready? So let's talk about over-the-counter products, which are products that you do not need a prescription for or doctor writes it for you. These are ones that you can just pick up at the store.
It's generally sunscreens or products with sunscreen. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, what does an OTC product have to do with beauty products? Well, if it's foundation and it makes an SPF claim, then it automatically becomes an OTC product because it uses certain ingredients that are designated as OTC.
Right. So just because we're talking about sunscreens right now, anything with a mineral-based sunscreen I do love, just because that there's only a couple active ingredients that they're using, and you'll see a section. This is what's different about that, is you see an active ingredient section up at the top, and you'll also usually see it's a mineral-based formula, which I love and personally would only recommend.
And what Sarah means by mineral-based for everybody else, who isn't like a cosmetic pro, is zinc. Anything that is a physical screen. In the last, would you say 5 years maybe? Recently, there are a lot of chemical sunscreens that have they are looked at with scrutiny in terms of their safety. So there has been a major push to go toward these mineral-based screens. And what you'll see is literally things like zinc or minerals.
Right.
And so those of you my age might remember using zinc oxide, and you put some zinc oxide on your nose and you go to the beach and you look ridiculous because you got this big white nose and it's silly. Well, now these mineral sunscreens are beautifully engineered to go clear. So don't you worry about, that. And when Sara says she loves the mineral-based sunscreen, this is a sunscreen connoisseur,
Yes, and mineral sunscreens are becoming more common, so it is a bit easier to find mineral-based sunscreens, which I love. They can leave a white cast sometimes. So what I will sometimes do, apply it and then put like more of like a tinted. That's why I use foundation tints so much, just because I use sunscreen every single day, a mineral-based sunscreen every single day, and use foundation tints on top of it. I don't recommend mixing it because it can dilute what you are trying the protection that you're using for your face. That's why I'll always recommend putting something on top of it instead. So the other thing that I look for is reef safe as well, because it's not like we're swimming near the coral reefs, but if they can bleach the coral reefs, then I wonder what else they can do to like our water if we're outside doing things.
And that's a mind blower. I know I'm going slightly off topic here, but if people putting sunscreen on and they go into an ocean of water, I mean, we're literally talking about a drop in the ocean.
Right.
If that is bleaching the coral reefs at that difference in terms of volume, wow. Right. I mean, that's some pretty heavy duty stuff that you're putting on your skin. So I am 100% with Sara on the mineral sunscreens, and we bring them up in a discussion of ingredient decks or INCIs. Now that you're a professional, you're going to be calling them an INCI. We bring that up because it makes the ingredient deck look different. Because they'll pull out the sunscreens or even acne products. They'll pull those out and call them active ingredients. And then there'll be a second ingredient deck below the active ingredient deck that they'll just call ingredients.
Or sometimes inactive ingredients.
Yes, exactly.
You can see either one. But yeah, for sunscreen, I do recommend just going a little bit, just because we have the research on it. There's a lot of claims about like avobenzone. There's even in the EU, there's limits to certain ingredients like that, how much you can actually apply before it starts to hurt you. So that's why I'm always going to recommend a mineral sunscreen or reef safe sunscreen as well. Both of those together, just because it's reef safe doesn't mean it's mineral safe.
And the minerals that you're looking for are zinc and titanium dioxide primarily. Those are the ones that, if you see those on your deck, on your INCI, you'll be good. Yeah. And also you'll see a percentage, generally in the active area.
You will.
And you may ask, Sara, why don't you see percentages in the regular ingredient decks?
Because they don't have to list percentages. You can absolutely have no idea what percentage an ingredient is at, which is mind-blowing to me.
It could be 99.9% water.
It absolutely.
Aqua.
Right.
We'll say.
And then it can have your sprinkles in at the bottom. And you have no idea. You have absolutely no idea, which is unfathomable to me. Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
It could be aqua and then vitamin this and vitamin that and peptide this and peptide that and and it's okay. They can get away with that. But we have another trick that will help. So one of the questions that we received is, how do you know if this ingredient deck is like shady? Like what we just said, 99% water or whatever.
Well, the only just red flag that just pops up immediately is using the common names of an ingredient instead of the proper INCI name. So, well, this might sound weird, but table salt, for instance, you wouldn't actually see it. I'm trying to not like give away certain ingredient or brands, but if you saw table salt in the ingredient
or just
deck,
salt,
right, or just salt, that would be incorrect because that's not the appropriate name. You would need sodium chloride,
which is their element. It's an elemental name. It's a scientific name. And these are all scientific names. Some of them are Latin. You'll see them with Latin looking names like barbadensis or,
a lot of the plant extracts you'll see.
Exactly. Usually it's the extracts that'll be like that. But many of them will be, the names that they're called in a lab. And I think it's annoying, frankly, because I'd rather just read my ingredient deck, and if it says salt, it says salt, and that would be great. But that's not the way
Right.
INCIs work.
That's not appropriate, actually. That's not the way that it needs to be at all, because you need the proper names. Because with some ingredients, there can be like silicone, for example. Silicone is just an umbrella name. It's not actually what the silicone is. So you're not actually knowing what silicone is in your product.
Yeah.
That's why we don't like using umbrella names.
Dimethicone, you know, and as you start, if you have a product that you really love, a primer, for example.
Okay,
right?
yeah, we're talking silicone.
And if you have a product that you really love, and let's say it was discontinued, and you loved this product, but you knew it was dimethicone based, you saw dimethicone as an ingredient that was right up there at the top, then what do you look for in another product to make sure that you're getting a similar effect?
Or if you're allergic to a product.
Oh, yeah.
What would happen if you're allergic to a certain silicone, for example, but not the others? What's going to happen if they just put silicone in there?
Yeah. Gluten.
So, yeah, what do? You cannot use that product, and it could be a product that's completely safe for you.
Yeah, and
but
if you're,
you just,
if you're allergic to gluten and you see wheat germ extract or, you know, anything related to wheat, you know. Now, in this next part that Sarah's going to sort of explain to us, this is a marketing deal.
Yes.
And what happens is, if you want to, let's say you want to create the world's greatest product for dry skin and maybe mature skin, and you want it to be light and you want it to really have a lot of skin smoothing effects. And so you would go to a chemical compounder, a chemical lab, and you would say, what have you got for this symptom? And what have you got for that symptom? And they might say, well, we make Matrixyl. And this Matrixyl does this, and here are the lab results, and you really need to make, you know, to formulate your product with this Matrixyl. And somebody else might say, well, we have Synake, and the Synake, you know, it makes sure that you firm the skin. And those words I just used, those are laboratory marketing titles for compounds of certain ingredients.
They're the trade names.
Right. But what you won't do is see those trade names like Matrixyl or Synake or some of the others. You won't see those in the ingredient deck. You'll see the breakdown of the component parts.
So if they do have the trade name, then that is incorrect. That does kind of give off a fishy vibe. It means that they're trying to use marketing. Instead, what it should have is the breakdown of what's in that component, because Matrixyl has a bunch of different components to make Matrixyl 3000.
Right. But that is not to say that in the marketing section of the label and in, you know, on the website or whatever, you will see Matrixyl 3000 and Regu-Age and Syncol, and those have cachet, but they won't be in with those names in your ingredient deck.
I think that's where I first fell in love with The Ordinary, because when Matrixyl 3000 first came out, you know, since we're in the skincare industry, everyone was talking about it. You're being sold to it. You're being told you need to add this to your ingredients, blah, blah, blah. Here are the benefits. You get like the presentation, and you get the marketing, the
photographs,
sheets, right? The befores and afters,
the charts where they show the wrinkle, and it looks like a little mountain, and it shows the wrinkle depth disappearing.
Right. You know. So all these brands are coming out with products with Matrixyl 3000 and then here comes The Ordinary, puts it in. I think at that time it was only like $6 for a bottle of it, of like 10% Matrixyl, which is another thing I love about The Ordinary. They put their percentages right on the front.
You should be getting a check from The Ordinary, Miss Sarah.
I do use a lot of The Ordinary, but you know, coming from this experience and being in the skincare industry, coming out and listing what the pH levels are on your products, listing the percentages, the entire ingredient decks, they do such a proper job. They follow EU regulations, which is everything we've been talking about. I also trust them because they're vegan. They're just a really good brand, and you have to trust your skincare brands. You really do.
And I agree with Sarah, but I'm going to I am going to play devil's advocate just for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really research your skin and really know what your skin needs, because oftentimes a company, a regular cosmetic company will compound these different ingredients to give you a certain effect. Now, Sara, being a product developer for many years, she could say, well, I want to get my matrixyl, and I want to make sure that I've got a peptide here, and The Ordinary doesn't really do. They have a buffet product, I think, that's a compounded product, but
they have a couple, but it's definitely more for people that can build together an entire regime.
But you can.
Mm-hmm.
We can. That's something we'll make part of the class. If you want to subscribe to us and continue to follow us on that,
Mm-hmm.
we'll show you what ingredients to kind of put together in your own skincare cocktail, which is really cool. It's a bit like knowing your season. Mm-hmm. When you can put together your chemical cocktail from a product line such as The Ordinary that is customized specifically for your skin needs, you're doing good.
So another thing I want to bring to your attention, that is another just red flag for anyone looking at ingredient decks, is the use of fancy marketing terms. So you'll see adjectives that are like organic, cold press, infused. That's
jet milled.
That's not. No, we don't put that in our
ingredient. It's not a scientific description.
Like we talked about earlier, that does not belong in your ingredient deck. That is trying to make something sound more fancy. It's a way to sell you, which I don't love.
Your ingredient deck may be spectacular, but it needs to be set up in a very dry, scientific, almost completely indecipherable, if you're not a chemist, way. Because that is the ingredient deck is the universal code that makes this product a part of a whole world of other products, and it makes sure that everybody is speaking the same language.
Right.
Now, that is not to say that the marketing materials that, it may be up on the label and it may say, oh, this uses cold press olive oil or cold press jojoba oil or whatever.
I will say we are not in the food industry. Food industry could be different. We are in the we are talking cosmetics.
It's
we are
strictly
not
cosmetics.
Right. Mm-hmm. When you said olive oil, well, olive oil isn't a cosmetic product, but I just want to make sure it's clear. Food, cosmetics, not the same.
I think we should have a show coming up about the use of oils for your skin that are fantastic. And olive oil, they're things that you can get at the grocery store that are amazing for your skin, like grapeseed oil is the bomb. Olive oil is great depending on how you use it. It can also be used as a cleanser around the eyes.
Coconut as well as another cleanser.
Yes. But, and castor oil. I've discovered castor oil for my hair, to make it really hydrated. We'll do a show on kitchen ingredients that are fantastic beauty ingredients.
If you want, let us know in the comments if that's something you would like.
So one thing that you always want to make sure that you see, and this is, once again, it's not the greatest thing in the world. It's not sexy. It's not romantic. It's not wonderful, but helper ingredients. When a product is put together, or when you bake your cake, it may not sound really sexy to say, well, you take a bunch of flour. Because cakes are magic and flour is flour, it's a commodity. But helper ingredients are key in putting together, formulating a product.
Well, making the cake stick together.
Yeah, so those helper ingredients might be preservatives, which have a bad rap. But we like preservatives. We like healthy preservatives because if you don't have healthy preservatives, you might find gunk floating around in your toner, or you might find mold in your cream. Preservatives are good. Emulsifiers, you need something that enables this concoction when whipped up. It will emulsify the ingredients, the water and the cream, to make kind of a light froth. Or the water and the oil. Water and oil don't mix, but if you have emulsifiers, they'll mix up and they'll make a cream. And you want to see that. Solvents, things to make the cream less viscous. If you want a light whip rather than, a balm, an emulsifier kind of does that for you. And these are things that chemists always use to put the cake together. And some of them if you don't see those on your ingredient deck, you got trouble. Because if they're just putting, oh, this and that and everything said, aloe and tea and honey and you don't see anything that, emulsifies these products, or in some cases with creams, you want a film former because you want to be able to put the cream on and then have a film form over the cream so that it continues to stay on your skin and do its work. You need these pedestrian kinds of things. And the trend in beauty and this with clean beauty and all this stuff is that people have started to look at preservatives and look at emulsifiers and film. All these pedestrian ingredients is the enemy. All they want to see is botanical extracts and
Oh, don't even
lavender.
Don't even get me started on plant extracts, because
But
some are really great and some just.
But I don't know if anybody out there has ever made like a flavored vinegar, or has made a rose water that you put lavender into, and you thought, oh, this is so cool. I made my own, flavored vinegar and this and that. And then all of a sudden it gets mold, and it's the stuff you put into it starts to get soggy and slimy, and you were like, oh, I put such beautiful ingredients in this. Preservatives. Preservatives are our friend.
Right. Now, you were talking about how this can be challenging. It can absolutely be challenging. Yes. But the one thing that we just wanted to make sure that you had is a really great just decoder of all of these ingredients.
Someplace you could go to. Some site that you could just go to. And if you have a question, that's not us. We're not here to be chemists. We're here to avail you of our experience and our history, but we've got a place for you to go.
Which is the INCI decoder. So you can actually go to, I will link it down below, the INCI decoder. You can put in the ingredient deck that you're looking at, and it will help you determine what the ingredients are, if they are effective, if they are safe. Also, I have been known to ask ChatGPT. It's not the end all be all. Don't get me started. This is just a good place to start as well. You can put the ingredients and say, are there any known issues with any of these ingredients? Or you can ask it whatever question you want, really. But both of these places are really great just to input the ingredient deck, and it can help give you an idea if there's anything that you should be looking out for, or if all of them are safe ingredients.
And you can, on the INCI decoder, and maybe I don't know, I've never done it with ChatGPT, but on the INCI decoder, you can put in the name of the product. So let's say that it took the beauty industry by storm when Oil of Olay, when their anti-aging product took #1 anti-aging product of all categories, most effective, including prestige categories. And this was maybe 10, 12 years ago. And it really opened people's eyes to the quality of mass products now compared to prestige products, and why you need to pay attention to all of them, because there's no point in paying $80 for a cream or $60 for a cream. We just recently read a review on 2 $60 creams, and one was effective. And these are both sold at Sephora. One was good, one was bad. And so it's no longer how much you pay for things that determine efficacy. It's what they're made of. So you can take a product like, you find something in mass, like, L'Oreal cream or Rock or whatever, and you can put the name of that product into the INCI decoder. It'll break out all the ingredients for you. And then if you want to look at and compare it to some sort of, a similar, like let's say it's a retinol, and you want to look at a retinol over on the Sephora side, you can put that in. You can look at the two. I mean, it will save you a ton of money, I promise you.
Absolutely. And you're talking retinol. I do use The Ordinary's retinol, by the way, if you're wondering.
With sunscreen. We do not use retinol products unless we use sunscreen.
During the day, retinol at night, daytime sunscreen.
Right. But if you're using them in the day, make sure you've got a nice, and back to what we said on sunscreen. So we've gone around the world with this little what is
I
it?
know we just keep like throwing in random.
I know, because it's our passion. We love this stuff. And you know, but call it a public service announcement to our class. You know, we want you to know these things.
Right. And it's funny because when you're looking for a retinol product, I'm always looking for a really great retinol product to use. And you can have the same exact priced items, and it's unbelievable. Like capsules, the little capsules, there's only a couple companies that really make skincare capsules, so they're all coming from the same place. And some can price
Well, here's a great
out of the
example.
world.
Vitamin C capsules. Neutrogena has a vitamin C capsule in mass. And everybody and their brother will charge you 3 times as much for a vitamin C capsule in the prestige world. It's a vitamin C capsule.
You can,
and if you know the percentage of the vitamin C and what form of the vitamin C, you'll get a really good vitamin C capsule at a mass market price that'll be just as effective.
Especially when they put the percentages out, because you're comparing apples to apples at that point. So this is a really great tool for you to use looking at prestige versus drugstore options. And the simpler the ingredient deck, the easier it makes it, because they're mostly more transparent, because they put out their percentages, like The Ordinary, like the INCI list. You get to see what's in the product, and they're very honest and open about it. So
somebody used to make a joke in our industry, and they said, we were talking to a chemist, and we said, well, we'd like to have some of this. And he said, well, you know, it'll raise the cost of your fill. So, you know, you need to make sure that you can afford that fill, or I can just sprinkle it over the vat. Meaning I can put a little bit in that won't do anything, but it will enable you to make a label claim.
Right.
That's not what you want. You want anything that people are advertising as an effective ingredient in this, in your cake, to be middle or above.
Exactly. So we hope this has been a useful video, because ingredient decks can be very tricky, but with the resources now, especially with INCI Decoder or ChatGPT, your resources are becoming much more available and easier to use.
And you know what? You can always ask us. If you've got a question, the whole point of being subscribed to our channel and being a part of our community is that, you know, 40 years of cosmetic development experience at your fingertips has a value.
Right.
And, you know, feel free. Ask away.
Absolutely.
And we're here to help. And it doesn't have to be color related. It can be beauty related, whatever.
So don't forget to subscribe, like, comment. We are a new to YouTube channel. We are coming up on our 5,000 subscriber mark. So we are very excited. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Sarah.
I'm Lucinda.
This has been another Color Class, and we'll see you in our next video.